Alberta is shoring up its ties to the United States as President-elect Donald Trump prepares to retake the White House. This week, Alberta joined 12 American states in the Governor's Coalition for Energy Security. Other provinces are also focused on Canada's most important trading partner, with Ontario Premier Doug Ford proposing to kick Mexico out of the North American Trade Pact over concerns it has become a backdoor for Chinese goods.
What I'm proposing to the federal government, we do a bilateral trade deal with the U.S., and if Mexico wants a bilateral trade deal with Canada, God bless them. But I'm not going to be drawn down with these cheap imports taking men and women's jobs from hardworking Ontarians.
So what role will provinces play in ensuring the resilience of the Canada-U.S. relationship under a second Trump administration? Danielle Smith is the Premier of Alberta, and she joins me now. Premier, welcome back to the show.
Hi, David.
This coalition, this meeting of the minds you form with the dozen other U.S. states, what are you hoping to accomplish here with this seat at this table?
Well, I'm so delighted to be part of the coalition. I've been proposing a coalition. We've called it the FREE Forum, the Forum for the Reduction of Energy Emissions. And the governors came up with this alternative idea to be focusing on ways that we can improve access to energy security. And they invited me to be part of it, along with 12 other states. And I'm looking forward to having that conversation. We want to focus on how do we make sure that North America as a whole has energy security, that we're dealing with issues of affordability, and we're responsibly reducing the impact on the environment. So I think it's going to be a very positive partnership.
Does this partnership become a vehicle to lobby the Trump administration to make sure that Alberta energy is not subjected to any of these tariffs that his administration is contemplating?
Almost certainly, and I'm sure that the governors probably had it in mind when they started in September that they might be facing a hostile administration in the White House. As it turns out, it looks to me, especially when I'm watching some of the appointments to different secretaries, it looks to me like it's going to be a very pro-energy type of cabinet. And so I think we have an opportunity coming together to say, what does that look like? How can we make sure that North America has the energy that it needs, whether it's bitumen, whether it's conventional oil, whether it's natural gas, for a long time to come? So I gather that we'll be meeting virtually, regularly, and then I think the governor is planning an in-person meeting in February, which I'm hoping to be able to go to.
If these tariffs were to apply, and we don't yet know what the full plan is there, we just know the promise of 10 to 20%, of a general tariff of everything going into the U.S. I mean, if it applied to Alberta bitumen, it would obviously be devastating to your economy because of the impact it would have there. But then there's the other side of it, of the drill, baby, drill mantra that Trump is going with, where they may want to drive up production in the U.S., which could increase supply to the market, which could drive prices down. What are your thoughts on the impact this could have on your provincial economy?
Well, look, I don't see a future where the U.S. is going to want to see higher gasoline and diesel prices for their people. I think that one of the things that they've always appreciated is the fact that they were able to get Western Canada Select at a discount. Their refineries in the Gulf Coast are tooled specifically to be able to receive our heavy oil product, and we are the largest exporting nation to the United States. We actually give them more of our product than Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Iraq combined. And so that's a message I want to continue to tell. It won't always be the case that America is able to produce as much as it is. And one of the things that we have to offer is that we do have a heavier product which can be turned into more uses, whether it's asphalt, whether it's petrochemicals. And so I think we have the ability to have a perfect partnership. I'm not that worried about tariffs applying to oil and gas. What I'm really focused on is whether or not we'd be able to get more of our product going down to that market within the next 4 years.
But what about downward pressure on price? Because Trump says he wants to cut people's energy bills in half in about a year. And with gasoline, for example, that means trying to get a price of a barrel of oil down to around $40. I don't imagine as Premier of Alberta you want to see a $40 barrel of oil necessarily. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that being sort of a policy goal of your biggest customer and the biggest market in the world?
Well, there is this is the wonderful opportunity that we now have, is that America is still our obviously our most important customer, but we have the ability now to export to the world. We have the ability to export to India, to Spain. There are a number of refineries that are particularly purpose built for our type of heavy oil. We could either have it go out the Trans Mountain Pipeline route or go out the Gulf Coast, because our Enbridge main line goes right down to the coast. So I think that there is going going to be some uncertainty in the oil markets. There's no doubt about it. But we are now in a really unique position where we can be the supplier of choice to the United States, but then also have other markets to be able to sell to. I think there's a great position for Alberta to be in.
I mean, the consensus seems to be it is unlikely that there will be a tariff put on Alberta energy for all the reasons we've gone through there. But as Premier, I mean, when you talk to the U.S. officials about this, either state peers or federal peers, is it a Team Alberta approach first on this to ensure that your energy products aren't tariffed, or does the access to your energy become part of the Team Canada conversation about ensuring all sectors of the economy are not subject to any kind of new tariffs?
I would love a Team Canada approach, but look, we're not going to allow for an emissions cap to have any role in reducing our production. And so if the federal government is insistent upon going down that pathway, then we'll take care of our own interests. I would like our interests to align with the federal government. I've told them so. I've told them that dropping the emissions cap is part and parcel of being able to do that. They have been unresponsive so far, but I think they need to recalibrate the relationship with the United States. We know what the United States wants. They want the federal government to meet its 2% NATO commitment, and they want to be able to participate with us in energy security. If those are the two things that we have to bring to the table, then you don't come to the table with an emissions cap. So that's part of the reason why we are going to be as collaborative as we can with the federal government approach. But we absolutely will defend our own interests and make our own relationships if we have to.
But there's more than just oil, right, as part of the conversation. There's the agriculture sector. There's other components to your economy that could be subject to these tariffs. And Alberta oil and critical minerals in your province and other provinces could be leverage points if it gets to that with the Trump administration. How do you see that playing out potentially?
Well, again, I had an opportunity a short while ago to have I was at an event where Robert Lighthizer was there, and he gave us a pretty good insight into what it is that the Americans want. The Americans want fair trade. They want us to buy as much product from them as they buy from us. And as a whole, Canada absolutely does do that. So I would think that we'd be able to come to a point where Canada could get a carve-out across the board on the tariffs on that basis. The real issue that we have is that Mexico has not been that equal partner with the United States, and in addition to that, they're inviting China to engage in investment in Mexico, which is hollowing out the manufacturing sector in both America as well as Canada. And so that's why I think we need to take a bilateral approach, put Canada first, and be able to get a carve-out in for all of North America, for both Canada and U.S. if we can, and if not, then we'll certainly be prepared to work with the American administration on whatever products it is that they need, so that we can have a constructive relationship. And I think our lead is going to be on energy.
Do you agree with Ontario Premier Doug Ford that maybe Mexico should be cut out of the process if it won't comply with sort of the spirit of the USMCA? That seems to be what you just said there. Am I understanding you correctly?
1,000%. And I had a chance to talk to Premier Doug Ford about it. And so I'm very much in sync with what he has to say. Look, Mexico is important to Canada. They're our fourth largest trading partner in Alberta. But just to give you the idea of the difference in the relationship, we have about $2.9 billion in bilateral trade with Mexico. We have $188 billion in bilateral trade with the United States. We certainly cannot sacrifice our relationship and friendship with our largest trading partner if this is a trade irritant. And that's why I'm committed to a Canada first approach. If we can get a bilateral agreement, I think that would allow for us to be able to avoid tariffs and have a really constructive relationship with the United States.
This federal administration, the Trudeau government, has a lot of experience in dealing with the Trump administration from its first term in office, dealing with the NAFTA renegotiation. A lot of the same players in the Canadian side are back this time, though they don't have as much runway, certainly as they did in 2016, 2017, with an election coming this year. What are your thoughts on how the federal election cycle can impact Canada-U.S. relations and how premiers might have to navigate that?
Well, if I understand it, I don't think that the trade agreement comes up for renegotiation until 2026. And so,
but on everything right now, like the tariffs could come before that. There's immigration issues, there's border issues, there's defense spending. How do you think it just affects the whole thing?
Well, look, I think it has to be a full court press right now. I think it's the reason why you saw the premiers when we got together, that one of the first things we called for was for the federal government to meet its 2% NATO commitment. We see those things as being tied, that if we can give the Americans what they want and need, then we'll be able to come to the table with the asks that on the things that we need. And without that, a foundation as a starting point, I think we'll be in real trouble in our discussions. But I think that every single premier in this country has good bilateral relationships with the states that are most important to them. The fact that we've signed on to this agreement with 12 governors demonstrates the relationship building that we've done. But I bet if you talk to every premier, they would tell you the same thing. And being able to use those relationships to persuade the Trump administration to take a Canada-U.S. approach, I think is going to be vitally important. And I hope every premier is reaching out to their contacts as we are to do the same thing.
Okay, you're reaching out to the governors. Just as a final point, Premier, I understand that you're also going to the inauguration. Do you have meetings set up with any of the Trump officials? What can you tell us about your trip to Washington in January?
Well, we've had a Washington office, I believe, since going back to 2005, and so we are co-located in the embassy, as is Ontario. So I've been planning to go for some time. I was going to go regardless of who ended up being in the White House, but I'll be there from about January 19th to the 23rd, and we'll be lining up as many meetings as we possibly can. I've met with governors, I've met with congressmen, I've met with senators, and we'll see if we can also meet with some of the secretaries while we're down there. But we're hoping to be able to have a pretty packed schedule.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, always appreciate the time. Thanks for being here today.
You bet. Thanks, David.